"Young lady, I said economy is that way." The words snapped like a whip in the tense silence of the first-class cabin. Kira froze. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her carry-on as every eye in the front half of the plane turned toward her. The flight attendant's hand hovered between Kira and the row of pristine leather seats, her manicured nails pointing toward the back of the aircraft as though directing traffic. Kira blinked, confused. "Sorry, but this is my seat." 1A. She held up her boarding pass. Its printed ink crisp and clear. Her voice was calm, but the tremble behind her confidence betrayed her. It was her first time flying alone, and first class had been a surprise gift from her mother, a reward for finishing top of her class, an early graduation present for getting into Spelman. But this woman, she didn't even look at the ticket. She looked at Kira. "Young lady," the attendant repeated, louder this time, "you must be mistaken. First class is reserved for business travelers and executives, not students with backpacks." Laughter. A dry chuckle from somewhere behind her. Someone whispered, "What's going on up there?" Kira's face flushed. "This is my seat," she said again, firmer now. "You can scan it if you want." The flight attendant, her badge read Melissa, tilted her head like Kira had just spoken in a foreign language. She snatched the boarding pass from her hand and glanced down. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, look at that. Someone made a clerical error." Her voice was thick with condescension. "We'll get this fixed for you." "No error," Kira cut in, her voice clearer now. "My godfather booked this flight himself. It's not a mistake." At that, something shifted in Melissa's face. Her smile faltered for just a second. "Then maybe your godfather can explain why you think you're entitled to sit where CEOs and senators sit."
That did it.
A few rows back, a middle-aged man in a navy suit glanced up from his tablet. "Excuse me," he said. "The girl has a valid boarding pass. Let her sit." Melissa didn't even look at him. Her hand was already reaching for the plane's intercom. "Security to gate 17. We have a non-compliant passenger." "I'm not non-compliant." Kira's voice finally cracked. Her hands trembled now. She stepped back, away from the seat. I'm just trying to sit where I'm supposed to." The whispers grew louder. Phones came out. One woman in sunglasses leaned into the aisle to film. "Look at her," Melissa muttered, loud enough for the front rows to hear, entitled "Disrespectful." Probably on a buddy pass. Kira couldn't breathe. Her throat was tight, heart pounding. She felt every pair of eyes, some pitying, others judging, burn into her skin. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers were clumsy, but she knew the number by heart. It rang once, twice. Then a deep voice answered, calm, direct. "Kira, what's wrong?" "They're trying to remove me from the flight," she whispered, barely able to get the words out. "I have my seat. I didn't do anything." There was silence on the line for a beat. "I'll take care of it. Don't move. Don't speak. Just stay calm." The line went dead. Kira lowered her phone, breathing shakily. Melissa had returned with a smug look and a male flight attendant in tow. "Let's go. We can't delay this flight over a tantrum." But before anyone could move, the intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Please remain in your seats. We're experiencing a minor delay. Gate control has requested a momentary hold on takeoff." Melissa turned toward the cockpit, frowning. Kira sat down quietly, slowly into 1A. She didn't say a word. The rest of the plane watched, murmuring in confusion. The man in the navy suit gave her a subtle nod. And then, the airport terminal door opened again. 3 men in dark suits stepped aboard. They weren't TSA, they weren't airport staff, and they weren't smiling. Melissa went pale. The lead man walked directly to her. "Ma'am, step aside. We need to speak with you privately." "But wait, what's this about?" she stammered. Now, passengers shifted in their seats, watching as Melissa was escorted off the plane. Kira didn't move. She didn't have to. She'd made the call. And everything was about to change. Melissa was gone. The first-class cabin fell into a stunned hush as the three suited men disappeared with her through the boarding door. The tension lingered like smoke, curling around every silence, every rustling magazine, every half-hearted cough. Kira stayed in her seat, 1A, her back straight, hands folded tight in her lap. Her heart was still racing, but her expression had cooled into something unreadable. She could feel it, the weight of their eyes. The people around her didn't know whether to congratulate her or apologize, and most did neither, until a gentle voice broke through the quiet. "Would you like something to drink, miss?" Kira looked up. A new flight attendant, mid-30s, soft smile, eyes warm with apology, stood at her side with a silver tray. "We have sparkling water, orange juice, cranberry, or something stronger, if you'd prefer." "Water, please," Kira said quietly. The tray dipped, the glass lifted, and the woman gave her a reassuring nod before stepping away. It wasn't much, but it helped. Just a moment of kindness in the wreckage. A few minutes passed. Then the pilot came on the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'll be resuming our flight shortly. Please prepare for takeoff." A collective exhale. Buckles clicked. Phones were lowered. The plane finally began to roll back from the gate. But Kira knew it wasn't over. Not even close. Meanwhile, on the tarmac, inside a secured service vehicle near the gate, Melissa sat in stunned silence. The three men who'd pulled her off the plane weren't airport security. They were Warren Aviation compliance investigators, and they had already pulled up surveillance footage from the boarding area. "Ma'am," the lead investigator began, "are you aware of who that young passenger is?" Melissa was still defensive. "Some teenager trying to play games in first class. I was doing my job keeping things in order. She was disrespectful and refused to move." The man slid a tablet across the table. "That teenager is Kira Bennett, the legal goddaughter of Elias Warren, CEO and majority owner of this entire airline." Melissa's mouth went dry. She had a legitimate seat assignment. You humiliated her, attempted to remove her without cause, and publicly misrepresented her status. "I didn't know," she started. "You didn't check," the man said, firm. "You assumed." Melissa tried to breathe, tried to find a word, any word, but there were none. The investigator stood. "We'll be forwarding this incident to our legal and HR teams. Your credentials are revoked as of this moment. You will not be returning to this airport." But I've been with the airline for 12 years, and in 12 minutes, he said coldly, "you've done more damage than most do in a lifetime." Back on the plane, 30,000 feet above ground, Kira stared out the window. She thought about her mom, probably pacing by the phone waiting for a text, saying she'd landed safely. She thought about all the times people had looked at her and seen only what they wanted to see. Her hair, her skin, her clothes, her age, never her name, never her worth. A chime sounded. "You can use approved devices now." She turned on her phone. A message had already come through. From Uncle, handled. "Don't let small people shake your crown. See you in Atlanta." She smiled. It wasn't big, but it was real. And for the first time since stepping onto the plane, she leaned back and let herself breathe. The seatbelt sign blinked off with a soft chime. Kira reached into her backpack, pulling out the leather journal her mother had given her that morning. On the front was embossed gold lettering, "Write your story before they try to write it for you." She opened to a blank page. Her pen hovered, unsure where to begin. The woman across the aisle, a white lady in her 50s, with a pearl necklace and a tightly curled bob, leaned in slightly. "I saw what happened," she said, voice hushed. "I just want to say I'm sorry. That woman was out of line." Kira looked up, surprised. The woman offered a small smile. "My name's Carol. I used to be a teacher. You handled that with a lot more grace than most adults would have." Kira smiled, unsure of what to say. "Thank you." Carol nodded and went back to her magazine. But the man 2 rows behind him didn't stop watching. He was in his early 40s, graying at the temples, typing away on a tablet. He had recorded the entire encounter from the moment Melissa raised her voice. Now he was clipping the footage, saving it into folders. The title at the top of the screen. Flight attendant accuses teen of fraud, gets fired on the spot. Meanwhile, somewhere above Kansas airspace, the pilot received a private message pinged to the cockpit display. It was from corporate. PR protocol. Do not comment. Do not engage. Passenger in 1A is under executive protection. No further delays. No media. The co-pilot looked over. Is that the girl in the front? Yep, the captain muttered. The one who apparently owns the plane now. They both chuckled. It wasn't a joke, but the irony was hard to ignore. Back in 1A, Kira finally began to write. She didn't start with Dear Diary. She didn't need to. She just let it pour. Today, I learned that people will question your place in the world before they even learn your name. They will look at you and decide whether you belong. And sometimes you'll have to sit in the seat anyway, even while they try to drag you out of it. And sometimes, one phone call is all it takes to remind them who you really are. She looked out the window again. The clouds outside were so thick and white, it looked like the plane was gliding through whipped cream. Then came another voice. You're trending. Kira turned. The man with the tablet leaned forward, showing her the screen. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Seat 1A was climbing fast. The clip of Melissa snapping at her had been uploaded only 15 minutes ago. Already there were thousands of comments. She had the ticket. That flight attendant just saw a black girl and assumed Kira Bennett. Remember that name. I hope that woman never works again. This is why representation matters. Kira stared. You posted that? He nodded. I blurred your face. For now, but it's going viral whether you want it to or not. She hesitated. Can you add my name? He blinked. Are you sure? Kira straightened in her seat. Yeah. It's time they see me. By the time the plane crossed into Georgia airspace, Kira Bennett was the most talked about person in the sky. Her name was now attached to every trending clip, tweet and reel. The hashtags had morphed from Seat 1A to Kira Bennett and Respect Our Youth. Some called her brave, others called her a symbol. But Kira, she was just trying to breathe. The man with the tablet. He introduced himself as Marcus, a journalist for a progressive tech outlet, sat across from her now. You really sure you want your name out there? He asked again. This isn't just about trending anymore. You're going to be the face of this by the time we land. Kira nodded. Let them see me. People like Melissa count on silence. She stared out the window, but her mind wasn't on the clouds anymore. It was on everything that came next. Meanwhile, 30,000 feet below, Elias Warren was already 3 moves ahead. In a glass-walled office overlooking a private hangar in Atlanta, Elias leaned against his desk, phone pressed to his ear. She okay? His assistant asked softly. She's solid, he said. Shaken, but she didn't back down. Elias's voice was calm, but his fingers drummed with restrained fury. You don't humiliate my niece and expect a slap on the wrist. He turned to his assistant. Schedule a press briefing. I want to be the one to address this. Not PR, not legal, me. The assistant blinked. You're taking this personally. I am personal, Elias snapped. I built this airline from nothing, so people like her could walk down that jet bridge and not feel like they were stepping into someone else's world. He paused. Apparently we still have work to do. Back on the plane, turbulence hit. A sharp jolt shook the cabin. The seatbelt sign blinked back on. Kira gripped the armrests, her stomach lurching for a second, but the pilot came on quickly. Apologies for that, folks. Just a little unexpected bump. We'll be descending into Atlanta shortly. Kira exhaled, until Carol across the aisle whispered, brace yourself again, not for the landing, for what's waiting. Kira looked at her. Everyone knows your name now. That means everyone's going to have an opinion. The good ones and the ugly ones. Kira didn't flinch. Let them. She thought of her mom, of Elias, of every black girl who'd ever been told she didn't belong. I didn't ask for this, she said, but I'm not going to hide from it. As the plane began its final descent, the cabin lights dimmed, phones buzzed in laps, notifications poured in. A teenage girl in coach gasped, showing her friend her phone. "Wait, she's on this plane? That's her right there." Another woman peeked past the curtain into first class, her eyes wide. The energy shifted. The same passengers who'd once stared in silence were now whispering with reverence, like they were witnessing something bigger than themselves. By the time the wheels hit the runway, Kira was no longer just a passenger. She was a symbol, and she had no idea what storm was waiting. When those doors opened, the aircraft doors hissed open with a rush of air and humidity, carrying with it the weight of a world Kira didn't quite recognize anymore. She was the last to stand, not because she was stalling, but because something in her told her to move with purpose now. No rushing, no shrinking. As she stepped into the jet bridge, she felt the first wave of flashbulbs hit. A wall of reporters stood just beyond the terminal doors, cameras raised, microphones thrust forward. "Kira, do you have a statement? Did the flight attendant touch you? Are you pressing charges?" Her heart hammered. She'd been prepared for looks, whispers, even praise. But not this. Not CNN. Not BuzzFeed. Not people from Germany and Brazil shouting her name. Marcus, the journalist from the plane, appeared beside her, offering her a coat. "Put the hood up," he whispered. "Too many vultures." She nodded, pulling it over her head. But before they could get far, a firm, familiar voice cut through the noise. "Kira." She turned. There he was, Elias Warren. 6'3", midnight skin, trim gray beard and eyes like thunderclouds. Her godfather. He stepped forward, took her hands in his, and said, without hesitation, "You did good, kid." Her shoulders sank into the safety of his presence. But she barely had time to breathe before he turned to the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elias said, raising a hand. Every camera light froze on his face. "I am Elias Warren, CEO of Warren Aviation, and today I am not here as an executive. I am here as a godfather to a young girl who was humiliated for daring to sit in the seat she paid for." Murmurs rippled through the press corps. "I watched the footage," Elias continued. "I listened to the audio. I saw the disdain in that flight attendant's eyes when she looked at Kira, and what I saw wasn't protocol. It wasn't policy. It was prejudice." Click, click. Cameras snapped non-stop. He raised a finger. "That employee has been terminated. Not because of cancel culture, not because we were forced to, but because she violated the fundamental principles of this airline: dignity, equality, and respect." Kira glanced at him, stunned. This wasn't a press statement. This was a mission. "I built Warren Aviation so that people like Kira, like all of us, could fly without judgment, without fear, without being asked to prove they belong every time they walk into a premium cabin." Reporters leaned forward, hungry for more. "And let me make one thing clear. My goddaughter doesn't just have a seat on this airline." He turned toward her, his hand now resting gently on her shoulder. "She has equity." The crowd gasped. Backstage, in the VIP lounge, Kira sat at a marble counter with a glass of water, trembling now that the adrenaline had worn off. She looked at her phone. 40,000 followers, 1.3 million likes on the original clip. Oprah's team had DM'd her. A university board member from Spelman had commented, "We stand with you. Your courage speaks volumes." Her thumb hovered over the notifications, too many to process. She put the phone down. Across from her, Elias leaned back. "You okay?" Kira shook her head, chuckling softly.
No.
"But I'm not scared either." Elias smiled.
"Good. Because this story just took off. And you're no longer a passenger, Kira."
He paused. "You're in the cockpit now." Kira had never been in a boardroom before. Certainly not one with glass walls that overlooked downtown Atlanta, where the city lights flickered like camera flashes and the table was longer than her living room. Yet here she sat, hair freshly braided, a navy blue blazer that Elias had tailored overnight, her backpack traded for a leather portfolio with her name embossed in gold. Across from her were 7 executives, VPs, PR heads, brand officers, and legal counsel. All of them older. All of them white or gray-haired. All of them watching her like she was a storm they hadn't seen coming. Because she wasn't just a girl who'd gone viral anymore. She was an asset now. A movement. A living, breathing headline. And what she said in the next hour would decide if this was a moment or a legacy. Elias sat beside her, not speaking unless needed. He wasn't here to lead. This time, the floor belonged to Kira. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but clear. "I know I'm not what you expected to see in this room, but that's exactly the point." She glanced at the screen behind her where the still of Melissa pointing toward economy had been frozen mid-frame. This isn't an isolated moment. This is what happens every time someone decides they know who I am before they hear a word out of my mouth. The legal rep shifted. "Miss Bennett, we want you to understand that we're doing everything we can. I'm not here for damage control," she said, her voice slicing through the air. "I'm here for culture control." Silence. She stood and walked slowly to the screen, pointer in hand. "You want to make this right? Then stop with just punishing one woman. Start fixing the system that made her feel comfortable treating me like that." A click. The screen changed. A graphic titled Initiative Seat 1A Inclusion Above All. She turned back to them. "Create scholarship flights for Black girls in STEM. Educate every employee on bias, not just once a year. Publicly commit to representation in every department, from janitorial to executive." The head of marketing raised a brow. "And what would your role be in all of this?" Kira didn't miss a beat. "I want a seat at the table, not as a mascot, as a consultant, and not just for the story you're spinning, but for every decision you make from here on out." The head of PR leaned in. "You understand how fast things move online, right? Viral one day, forgotten the next. If we tie this campaign to you and it fades, we're back to square one." Kira nodded. "That's true. Which is why you don't just need my face." She pointed to the board again. "You need my voice." For a moment, no one said anything. Then Elias leaned forward, placing a hand flat on the table. "She's not asking for permission," he said. "She's giving you the opportunity to evolve before the world forces you to." One by one, the heads around the table began to nod. Not because they were being sold something, but because they knew she was right. Outside the boardroom, journalists camped like birds on a wire. Employees whispered in the hallways. Screens across airports replayed the moment Melissa had sneered, had snapped. But in here, in this room, a storm had spoken, and they had listened. Later that evening, Kira walked through the sliding glass doors of a small boutique hotel, just outside the city. She was exhausted, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Her limbs ached with adrenaline's aftermath, and her mind reeled from the sheer speed at which her life had shifted. Her mom was waiting in the lobby. The moment their eyes met, Kira ran. Not because she was scared, but because no matter how strong she'd been in that boardroom, no matter how composed she'd stayed on camera, she was still just 17. And in her mother's arms, she could finally fall apart. "I saw everything," her mom whispered, holding her tightly. "You were brave. So brave." Kira trembled against her, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She hadn't cried when the flight attendant yelled, not when the cameras swarmed, not when Elias handed her the spotlight. But now it all came flooding out. "I didn't want to be brave," she said into her mom's shoulder. "I just wanted to go to college. I just wanted to sit down." Her mother pulled back slightly, framing Kira's face with both hands. "Sometimes, baby, God sits you in a storm so everyone else knows where the shelter is." They went upstairs. The suite was modest, but cozy. There was tea steeping on the table. Kira finally let herself kick off her shoes and collapse onto the couch. Her phone buzzed. A new notification. No. 10:20. She flipped it over. More DMs. More interview requests. CNN, BBC, BET. Even Ellen's team had reached out. She scrolled past them all until one message stopped her cold. It was a video, sent anonymously. She tapped play. The screen lit up with grainy airport surveillance footage, unedited, time-stamped. The jet bridge, the boarding area, Melissa confronting her. The moment Kira held out her ticket, the moment Melissa slapped it from her hand. The exact moment the flight attendant whispered to a colleague, "She's just trying to sneak up front." Probably stole it. Kira's hands clenched. She hadn't even heard that part before. Her heart thudded. But what struck her more was that someone had leaked this to her directly. No watermark. No outlet. Just raw proof. Attached was a single sentence. "They'll spin it. Don't let them." Kira turned to her mom. "I need to go live." Her mom paused. "Are you sure? You've done enough." "No," Kira said. "I've just started." Within minutes, her ring light was up. Her phone was propped against a stack of textbooks. No makeup, no graphics, just Kira. As she was, she went live on Instagram. "Hi everyone," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I'm Kira Bennett. Maybe you know me now as the girl from the plane. But before all this, I was just a high school senior. A future biology major. A kid trying to see the world on her way to Spelman." She inhaled. "But yesterday, someone looked at me and decided I didn't belong. And that story has gone viral, which is great. Awareness matters. But I need y'all to know something. This isn't just about me." She paused, letting the silence settle. "This is about every black girl who's ever been asked to prove she earned her place. Every teen who's been told they were too loud, too confident, too much. This isn't my 15 minutes. This is our megaphone." The comments exploded. "Speak." She's preaching. Not just a passenger, a pilot. Kara smiled softly. "I didn't start this storm. But I'm not running from it either." The next morning, Kira woke to a world that no longer whispered her name. It shouted it. Every major news outlet had picked up the live stream. Her speech was already being quoted on morning shows and printed across headlines in bold fonts that seemed to carry her voice farther than she ever imagined it could reach. "I didn't start this storm, but I'm not running from it." Kira Bennett, age. By noon she had over 3 million followers across platforms. Her inbox was overflowing with invites. Speaking gigs, youth leadership summits, even an offer to guest host a daytime talk show. But Kira didn't say yes to any of them. Not yet, because she wasn't done with her agenda. At 1:00 p.m. sharp, she walked into the Warren Aviation Media headquarters for a follow-up press briefing. This time, she didn't wear a blazer. She wore a white t-shirt that said 1A, not just a seat, paired with jeans and sneakers. She wanted the world to know that change didn't need to wear a suit. Sometimes, it wore truth. Elias stood to the side as she stepped to the podium, giving her the space. This was her moment, not his. Kira leaned into the mic. "Yesterday I was humiliated. Today I've been elevated. But I want to make something clear. I didn't ask to go viral. I didn't want attention. I wanted accountability." She looked directly into the cameras. "And now that I have the platform, I'm going to use it." She announced the launch of a new initiative, Project Seat 1, a partnership between Warren Aviation and youth empowerment organizations across the country. For every mile flown on Warren's routes, the company would donate to scholarships, mentorship programs, and diversity training programs, starting with high school travel grants for underprivileged teens. Because no girl, Kira said, should have to defend her right to sit in a seat she already earned. The crowd erupted. Applause. Some tears. Even the reporters had dropped their notepads to clap. But behind the scenes, the reaction was even louder. Major competitors scrambled to match the move. Airlines issued public statements of support. TikTok users made tribute videos. Celebrities reposted her live clip with comments like, "Zendaya, this girl, all the respect." Michelle Obama, representation, courage, voice. Kira Bennett is all of it. Denzel Washington, keep sitting in those seats, young queen. Kira's message had started on a plane. but it had landed everywhere. That night, back at the hotel, Elias and Kira sat on the rooftop deck, watching the city lights flicker beneath a sky smeared with stars. "You changed the game," Elias said. Kira shrugged. "I just told the truth." He smiled. "No, you owned it." Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim, black folder. Inside was a document. Kira opened it slowly. Her hands shook. It was an official letter of appointment. Title: Youth Inclusion Consultant, Warren Aviation, Board Seat Advisor. With it came a small equity grant. But more than that, it came with authority. Kira looked up at him, stunned. "I don't know if I'm ready for all this." Elias reached over and placed a hand on hers. "You were born for this, Kira. And remember, you never have to fly solo." Not everyone was clapping. While millions supported Kira's rise, a growing corner of the internet was sharpening its knives. The backlash came slowly at first. A few comments here, a couple of angry posts on fringe forums. But by day 3 the noise had become deafening. Entitled brat, handed a seat she didn't earn. Affirmative action in the skies. Bet her uncle bought that ticket after the fact. Kira scrolled through the hate. Not out of weakness, but because she wanted to see it, to understand what she was up against. Elias warned her, "Don't go down that rabbit hole." But she shook her head. "I'm not afraid of the dark anymore." The worst came in the form of a carefully edited video posted by a rival airline's anonymous staff account. It stitched together clips from the plane, cropped to make it look like Kira was the one being combative. The caption read, "This is what you get when you replace merit with media buzz." Within hours it had over 2 million views. Kira sat in silence, watching the comments flood in, until her phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. "You see it yet?" Then another. "Check your email. You'll want to respond fast." She hesitated. Opened the inbox. At the top was a forwarded thread, internal memos, timestamps. Even screen captures of the rival airline's social team discussing how to smear her before the clip went live. Kira's hands trembled. This wasn't just a few trolls. This was sabotage. And they were scared. The next morning, Kira walked back into the Warren HQ, this time flanked by Elias and 2 attorneys. "This isn't just defamation," the attorney said. "This is strategic character assassination." Kira sat at the center of the room, eyes clear. "Let them lie. I'll answer with truth." She didn't want to go live. Not this time. She wanted receipts. Proof. Precision. So she did a sit-down interview with a major outlet, The Atlantic, laying out the full timeline, the truth, the footage, and the documents that had been sent to her anonymously. 3 days later, the anonymous airline staffer was fired. The smear video deleted. But the damage had already boomeranged. The internet, ever hungry for a villain, turned on the attackers. A new trend emerged. Let her speak. Where black and brown teens shared their stories of being denied, dismissed, degraded in spaces they'd earned. Kira became more than a face. She became a framework. That night, she sat on the balcony of her hotel again, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the skyline. Elias joined her, 2 mugs of cocoa in hand. He didn't speak for a while, just sipped and stared. Finally, he said, "You okay?" Kira nodded. "They came for me." "Yeah," he said. "They always do when they're afraid. But I'm still here." He smiled. "Yes, you are." They clinked mugs. And above them, a plane roared through the clouds. "Miss Bennett, this way, please." Kira followed the security detail through the backstage corridors of a massive auditorium in Washington, D.C. She wasn't here for a photo op, she was here to testify. The Congressional Subcommittee on Transportation Ethics had requested her presence formally. What happened on Flight 281 had become more than a viral headline. It had sparked national debate about systemic bias in air travel, customer profiling, and corporate response mechanisms. Kira had reviewed her prepared remarks a dozen times. But when she stood before the microphone, seated behind a desk with a United States flag at her back, she spoke straight from the heart. My name is Kira Bennett. I'm 17 years old. I didn't come here today as an activist, or an influencer, or even a business consultant. She looked directly at the room of shoddily dressed lawmakers. I came here as a girl who bought a ticket, who followed the rules, who boarded her flight, and got shamed for existing in a space someone decided wasn't meant for her. Her voice didn't shake. It rang. I didn't ask to go viral, but now that I'm being heard, I'm going to speak for every person who's been told they didn't belong, who got moved, silenced, or shamed just for showing up. One congresswoman leaned forward, moved. Another congressman, older, skeptical, grunted. You do realize, Miss Bennett, that emotions can dictate policy. Business is business. Kira met his eyes. So is bias, she said flatly. It is a business, and if you ignore it, you're complicit in it. Silence. Her words would be quoted for weeks. Clips from her testimony aired across every major network. But it was her composure, the way she answered questions, the way she held herself in front of poor, that changed the narrative. This wasn't just a lucky teenager caught in a scandal. This was a leader in the making. Back in Atlanta, Warren Aviation finalized the terms of her board consulting role. She would advise not just on internal training, but on external outreach, youth partnerships, and global reputation strategy. Her compensation. She declined a salary. Instead, she requested that the funds be used to create a program called Boarding Pass, a nonprofit offering mentorship, travel stipends, and internship pipelines for underrepresented youth in aviation and hospitality. It launched within weeks, and within months, other airlines were copying the model. But for Kira, none of that compared to what she saw one early afternoon in the Atlanta terminal. A little girl, maybe 10, with beads in her braids, stood in front of gate 17, holding a doll in one hand and a printed ticket in the other. She turned to her mom and asked, "Mommy, do you think they'll let me sit in first class?" Her mom knelt, smiled, and pointed to a giant digital screen overhead. It displayed an image of Kira smiling confidently beside the text. "No seat is too good for you, Kira Bennett." The girl smiled wide and nodded. Yes, they will. Summer came fast. In just 3 months, Kira had transformed from an honors student with a dream to a national figure with an undeniable voice. But she never lost track of her purpose. Even with interviews, board meetings, and viral moments, Kira still walked her little brother to school, still studied for her biology finals, still read her books at night curled up on the couch next to her mom, because fame had found her, but identity had always been hers. At Warren Aviation's annual shareholders meeting, Elias opened his keynote address with a slide. Not a pie chart, not a graph, but a photo of Kira head held high on flight. Some moments change markets, he said. Others change missions. The crowd filled with shareholders, investors, analysts, sat upright. This young woman didn't just challenge a broken system. She rewrote the script. In the process, she reminded us that equity isn't a trend, it's an obligation. He paused. I'm proud to announce that starting this fall, Warren Aviation will make every domestic route mentor accessible. For every first-class ticket purchased, one inner-city student will be flown to their first college tour on our dime. Applause thundered. Elias looked off stage, nodded. Kira stepped out. Not with flash, with focus. She didn't give a speech that day. She just stood there as the screen behind her lit up with 4 words in bold. Power doesn't apologize anymore. But not everyone clapped in celebration. Behind the scenes, competitors scrambled. One airline attempted to launch its own inclusivity program, but was instantly dragged for copycatting. Others tried to minimize her movement, offering hollow hashtags, performative promises, empty panels. Kira watched it all and said nothing, because she wasn't interested in applause. She was building altitude. In her own life, things were changing too. Spelman had offered her a full scholarship, academic and honorary. They even asked her to give the freshman teen an address. She accepted, but insisted she be introduced not as a viral icon, not as a corporate board member, but as Kira Bennett, student. Because while the world saw her as a symbol, she saw herself as a seed, and she was still growing. The fall air in Atlanta was crisp, touched with the kind of golden light that makes even sidewalks shimmer. Kira stood outside her dorm building at Spelman College, surrounded by buzzing freshmen, oversized suitcases, and the warmth of becoming. She'd done a dozen interviews that week, fielded press requests, met with nonprofits, approved drafts of national campaigns she had helped design. But right now, she was just a college student holding a laundry basket, wearing sneakers and no makeup, her Warren Aviation ID tucked in a drawer where it belonged for the moment. Her roommate Zora burst out laughing when a group of girls on the quad gasped. "Wait, is that the Kira Bennett?" Kira rolled her eyes playfully. "Tell them I'm just the girl who'll be in biolab at 8 a.m. Zora nudged her. "You do realize your face is still on a billboard at Hartsfield-Jackson, right?" "I'm trying to ignore that," Kira muttered, smiling. Later that week, the university's welcome ceremony filled the auditorium to the rafters. Kira was last to speak. She stepped onto the stage in a simple navy blue dress and a necklace her mom gave her on move-in day, a tiny gold airplane, wings outstretched. She didn't bring notes. She didn't need them. "When I boarded a plane 6 months ago, I didn't know it would take me anywhere other than Atlanta," she began. "I didn't know it would expose something so ugly or awaken something so powerful." She looked across the rows of faces, young women like her, full of potential, sitting upright with pride. "I want to say this to every one of you. You are not passengers in this life. You are pilots of your story, of your space, of your voice." Applause began, soft at first, then thunderous. Kira raised a hand and closed with, "And if anyone ever tries to move you from your seat, don't just sit back down." A pause. "Buy the damn plane." The auditorium exploded. Months passed. Then one day at Gate 17, the same gate where it all began, a little girl clutched her teddy bear and nervously approached the jet bridge. A flight attendant kneeled beside her. "You excited to fly?" The girl nodded. "I'm sitting in 1A today. My teacher told me that's where brave girls sit." The attendant smiled and pointed to a framed quote hanging on the wall beside the gate door. It read, "No one gets to decide where you belong, but you, Kira Bennett." And above the clouds that day, Seat 1A carried more than just passengers. It carried a legacy, a reminder that sometimes the storm that tries to shake you is the one you were born to fly through.